The only real hope and change you'll ever get is from God. It's going to come from the Lord, or it's not going to come at all. It's going to come when you admit that you can't do it and that you've got to have His help.
I heard a child say something, right? One of you guys in the COT chat room, you're familiar with this. I heard a child say something that was shared with me when I was a small kid. And it's not in the Bible, but I heard a child say it. You know how when you're a kid, right? You have a knowing of certain things, correct? And in this case, when I was about 9 or 10 or something like that, I had an extraordinary experience. And from that experience, I've had this idea I never shared. I only shared it with actually about 3 people. And I heard a child today, a small kid. They couldn't have been no more than, 4 or 5. They said the exact same thing. And it's the first time I've heard that ever. And it has to do with something that's going to happen to the earth and the people of this earth. And it could be an explanation as to why no children are in those dreams. But so let me give you the gist of it. Because this, I'm telling you now, it was something, it's very difficult to explain. It's something that I saw, that I had knowledge of. I don't know how I have knowledge of it, right? But it's there, and a small child I heard say the exact same thing. And it made me think back, because I thought I was the only one that had that, and I only talked to 3 people about this my entire life. I'm going to tell you guys about it though. When I was about 9 or 10, of course, a series of dreams began with me. And I had that dream series about 24 times throughout my life. But I saw people on the earth. You know how people have different dispositions and beliefs and this, that, and the other. But essentially, the earth split. Now, not split as though it didn't crack down the middle or anything. It didn't do that. It split. The people that were, violent, the people that were stubborn, all sorts of people have dispositions. The people who just would not give them, or they just would not accept that they were created. And they lived their life a specific way. They were like poison going through life. People with doubts are like poison, and they spread that poison. But you had some people who actually did believe in the Lord, and they trusted in the Lord, and they trust in the Lord. And they weren't in the best of shape, but their hearts cried out for the Lord just about every day of their lives. And they could see what this world truly was by way of the people. And so many generations had passed, but it got up to a point where one morning a bunch of people woke up, and everything was new. Everything was different and new, but it was still the earth, but everything was different and new. And people began to discover all these abilities they had. They were still right here on this earth, but everything was new, and it was fresh. It was peaceful. Not one threat was on the earth. Not threats by bugs, animals, anything else. Everything was appreciative of everything else. And that was just the earth. So I'm going to call that phase 1. So I looked around, and after seeing many things that were in this new place, it was pristine. Can you imagine the earth pristine, but a human being without limitations? Imagine that. You have no limitations. Everything had the ability to speak or to communicate. Everything knew, everybody knew everybody, right? So it wouldn't be a shock that you would see a person having a discussion with some sort of creature you never saw before, but the creature would have this pleasant look on their face, like a smile or something like that. And you couldn't quite capture everything that was being said, but you know that there was a lot of respect between the two, and joy and stories and all sorts of things. The sun was not in the sky, but the sky was lit brilliantly all the time. It was just so different. And then there were others there, right? Others that were the new ones. I'm going to call them the new ones that discovered that they were there. And I'd say maybe who knows, a millennia, they were in this period of just thanks. Can you imagine a person that is so grateful that they stay in that mode of gratefulness for millennia? Can you imagine that? There was no rush on anything, right? No rush. And they were human beings, but they were different. I cannot describe you how they were. I just know that they were once human beings. They were earthbound personalities, human beings. But they were so appreciative of where they went. Some people that never thought they'd make it there. But here's the deal. There were people on earth that were just messed up from day one to the last day. But in their hearts, they always cried out for the righteousness of the Lord. They agreed with the righteousness of the Lord. But they could never achieve it. They were there too. They were flawless and fulfilled and complete. And then I began to wonder, well, what happened to everybody else? And I saw another earth. The other earth, right? The other earth, it was just like the one earth that was pristine, but it was not pristine. It was broken down. It was full of ash, hatred, wars, just everything you can imagine that would go wrong, went wrong. They were in a crisis. They had geological crises. They had space-based crises. And they were there doing their thing. Many were trying to survive, right? They were persistent in their survival, not depending on the Lord, but persistent by their own means. Violence was in the earth. People were defending themselves. And it was almost like you had to, everybody who was there was forced into the act of murder. They somehow or some way a situation would arise, and they would always find themselves in murder. The earth was hot, right? Parts of it were stormy. People still had their same, it was just like this, but imagine the earth right now. But all the stories you heard about, disasters and earthquakes and everything else, imagine all that happened. The earth is at war. Nations are at war. Same politics, same everything else. But it was separated from the other earth. And all the people that were there were stuck there. I mean, when I say stuck, they were stuck there. And they would have to redo cycles in this earth. So death was no escape. You can escape through death. You were just stuck there. Here's the part that when a person in life, let me see if I can explain this. Now remember, this is just something a 9-10-year-old boy saw. Okay, this is not written anywhere. This is just something I never share with anybody. A person on this earth who mistreats people, abuses people, laughs at people, degrades people, does all manner of evil against a person from time to time, but they never change their ways. They have chances. All those people had chances. All of them, multiple chances throughout their lives. Like a moment in time would hit that person throughout their lives. And it was almost like an audible voice would tell them, this is your chance to change. And they wouldn't do it. They would go back to the same behaviors. Well, those people had to live the lives of everyone they abused, of everyone they mistreated, of every animal they mistreated, everything. So every act of violence and every act of aggression and all those acts, a person had to relive that. That was only the first part. So when they would die, they would have to live the entire. That means a person would live the life of those who had joy, but that joy was stolen by someone who did something disastrous to them. And there was no escape. They had to know their victims. They had to know those that they did something to. Even the animals. You know how people abuse animals? They're very cruel to animals. We're not talking about those who would prepare them for food and things. No, we're talking about people who just like to abuse things. They would also have to endure what the animal endured. And that was one of the most terrific things a person could go through, because you didn't have the power of speech, but you had the cognitive mind of reasoning, right? So you would find yourself in situations in sheer pain, sheer this and sheer, it was just awful. So a person had to understand, they had to know every victim they ever touched in the wrong way. And that was their, they had to go through that. That was just not good. This other place where everything was pristine and everything else, that was only the first stage. That was the first stage. It was almost like a time where people would actually get used to a brand new way of doing things. And it was enjoyable every step of the way. They were still learning. There were still things people had to do. It was the beginning of their life. That was the beginning of their life. There were no limitations. Everything was different. You know how the sky looks right now, right? On the pristine earth. I'm going to call it the pristine earth. You look up in the heavens and it is untouchable. Right? Stars all over the place, this, that, and the other. It was not like that on this pristine earth. You could literally look up and go somewhere, anywhere you want to go. Nothing was off limits, right? Nothing was. So it was creation without limitations. Yeah, that's what it was. And everybody knew everybody. But it was fulfilling. Anyway, that I wanted to share that with you guys because a child recently said the exact same or something very similar to that because they were talking about two earths. And I never heard that from anybody. So I held all that to myself. That's not in the Bible. It's not in the Bible. There's no hint of that anywhere. But I had a very detailed view into that when I was a small kid. It's been with me to this very day. It really has. How it began right before that changeover, though, is also shocking because right before that happened, right before that split happened, there were issues in the earth. Nothing major except wars had happened to that point. Nothing. But then mankind began to change fast. Right? It was almost like a big part of the world became very aggressively violent in all sorts of ways. And then when you know it, right after mankind with drugs was a big deal. It was a big deal, right? So people doing drugs was a big deal. Right after that drug moment, drugs, it was just consuming everybody. A lot of people, I'll say. But right then and there, something had happened. And that was it. The split took place. Before some of the major natural disasters, that split took place. Before some of the greatest wars that would consume just about all life on the planet, the split took place. But many people were left in this plane, right? They didn't go to the new one. They weren't in the new one. They were here. And again, the people who stayed here on this earth that was full of wars and geology was corrupt and everything else, those people, they knew about Christ, but they did not choose him. They did not choose Christ in their compassion. They did not choose Christ in how they dealt with people. They did not choose Christ in a myriad of ways, and they harmed other people. And they seemed to have, they always had someone to point a finger at. They never took responsibility for anything. They were angry because it was always somebody else's fault. This, that, and the other. That was something when that little girl said something similar. Now, I give you a caution. None of that is in the Word of God. Some things are similar, but it's not in the Word of God. That was something given to me when I was a small child. I never uttered a word of that, though it's been in the back of my mind this entire time. Right? You know how sometimes you have something so impressive that you ask the Lord, well, how does that even fit? How does that fit in your word? That doesn't fit your word. But that's why I'm devout to the Word of God, not dreams, not visions, not any of those things, but to the Word of God, right? But that he did give me when I was small. Now, could mean something similar to that. But I saw what I saw. Most importantly, I saw the chances people had and how they thought and how they operated and what they were thinking about. You see, in the end, there are going to be people who choose themselves. They're not willing to sacrifice anything of themselves for the sake of somebody else. Point blank, they're not. There are lots of people who they hide the fact that they only think about themselves. They'll be nice up until the point if anything takes away from them, they're not willing to part from it. And so that's their answer. When it comes down to it, when the crisis point comes, they're always going to choose themselves. I saw people who were just incredible people, nice, charitable, but when it came down to it, they chose themselves. They wouldn't even suffer a cut on the finger for somebody else. They wouldn't do it. And when the pressure came to everybody on this earth, everybody before the split, that's exactly what they did. They turned to everybody else and they blamed everything on everybody else. That was not good. The USA at that time was infiltrated, and it was under siege. And large parts of the USA were under siege by an enemy nobody knows yet. It's kind of like, and it goes along with other things the Lord has showed me, things that most certainly have come to pass, like the new uniforms the soldiers were wearing. At the time when I had those series of dreams, the last one I had was back when they had the other uniforms. Uniforms have changed 4 times since then. Now they're in new uniforms all over the cities, right? You guys have seen these ICE individuals all over the place. You've seen them. You've seen some of the military uniforms for the escorts of political figures. You've seen them. You've seen those things. You've seen the militant vehicles in the streets. In fact, it's the same thing, the same picture of the stone steps. Some of the vehicles in the stone steps, the armored vehicle, which was based off a very specific vehicle I talked about here on COT. You see it out in the streets also. Remember, somebody asked me one time, they said, World War III is going to begin. I said, it won't begin until they mount lasers on the tanks, and lasers are in the soldiers' hands. You guys remember that? Lasers were mounted on the machinery, and then the other war will start. World War III will begin. It'll be in full bloom back in the Middle East again. But lasers will be mounted on the tanks, and that was before. That was before they had the new sighting systems, the lasers, and they didn't have anything they have now. But now they have lasers mounted on military equipment. And in that, I saw a belt. A soldier had a belt. And the belt was used for the weapon. So to have one of the weapons, to use a laser on the weapon, you had to have one of these belts that would, had looked like C-cell batteries were in this belt all the way around the waist. Right? You had to have one of those in order to fire that weapon. But I was looking for one because I was in the middle of the desert trying to protect a woman. That was weird. It was a woman in the desert I was trying to protect, and I needed one of those weapons, and the only weapons that were out there were those weapons. And I saw the fighting was vicious. The damage to soldiers was vicious. They even had laser repellent armor that they're using. You know that's real now, right? What the Lord showed me back then has come to fruition. Absolutely has come to fruition. So I firmly believe we're at the door. We're at that time. We're at that time. See, they used to have, diode lasers and chemical lasers. Well, they have something else out now. Something else that is incredibly potent. That has I believe it has a 350 millisecond charge time. That's less than a second for all of you who can't do that conversion. So you can fire that laser at full strength, and in less than a second, you can fire that laser again. So that laser fires with 15 seconds. 15 seconds. You can hold that laser down and cut things up. Let that trigger go, and then within 350 milliseconds, it is charged again. It's the same thing they did with motors, right? Electric motors create heat. That's when you're utilizing an armature and some coils, and you're utilizing DC power to charge those coils, to control the armature of that motor to make it spin. You're not utilizing that these days. You know that, right? You're utilizing something that is just incredible. It's in factories. The torque on these motors is incredible. They do not get hot, and you could submerge them in water, and they would still run for another 200-300 years. They're very lightweight and flat. They do not use the power that a DC motor uses. They do not. But they can handle 100 times more of a load than any DC motor could. These things are incredible. They are incredible. Anyway, these things are out there, which means what they've been showing people, well, I'll give you a hint of something because I really can't say it. I'll get myself in trouble, but let's just say that propaganda since the 1950s has been very important in the USA. Not propaganda for other nations, but citizen propaganda has been very important. You see, if you know the facts about anything, so will everybody else know the facts about that very thing. So they can't let you know the facts. They cannot let you know the capabilities. They cannot let you know the breakthroughs. Because if you know the breakthroughs, so will all the other countries. So will all the enemies. And if you do that, you're going to lose your edge. So civilians are shown things by way of propaganda that's likely 200 years behind what's deployed in the field. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. That means there are certain mysteries you're just not going to know in this form. You're not going to know them. People are going to continue to believe the narratives given to them because of the limitations they constantly advertise on the news. But I will tell you, mankind has solved a great many things. They've gone much further than most can imagine. Many things are possible that unfortunately civilians will not know about. They can't. And if any of that gets out to the civilian population, they're going to ask for everything else to be uncovered, so they can't let any of that stuff, that futuristic stuff, slip out. They can't do it. You guys do understand that, right? So don't expect it. It's not going to happen that way. If they showed everybody a breakthrough, a medical breakthrough, that was just an enormous medical breakthrough, but in that breakthrough, people would begin to deduce that, wait a minute, in order for that breakthrough to be possible, they have to have this type of technology. That opens up a can of worms. They can't do that. So there are certain things you'll never know about. What do you know? That's in the Word of God too. These men hold mysteries that they will never tell about. They can't, because the moment it's known, the enemy will also know. See, we live in a world now where the idea that's let loose can actually be put into practice overnight. If the enemy knew something was possible, they would invest everything they have into it. Just so you understand this simply. If, say for example, I represent a corporation, I do, and I have a secret, so I don't let that secret out, but one day it slips. Well, the man in the bushes corporation has developed a technology that does this, that, and the other, and it actually works, right? Now, when that gets out there, everybody else thought it was impossible. Just by that going out into the world and being verified is going to motivate people to throw resources in that area, and they will solve the problem. The issue is, enemy states are going to solve the problem. Everybody's going to solve the problem. And when that problem is solved, I lose my edge on everything. I lose my edge on everything. You guys do understand that? I tell you, it's all going to go back to weaponry. That's why the military-industrial complex puts a seal on just about everything, because it will all track back to them. And if the enemy knew the weaponry that was possible, if they knew that weaponry was possible, they would throw all the resources into developing their own. All they need to know is that it's possible and verify that it's possible, that somebody has done it. Because see, if all of us have a mind like this, that if he can do it, I can do it too. That's how your mind works. If you see someone doing something and you verify it, then in your mind, you know it's no longer impossible. And solutions will begin to just come into your brain. That's how things work. But if you hide it, if it's left in that plausible area, and you cannot verify that somebody has actually accomplished something, then you'll say, well, maybe it's possible, but I just don't have time for it. Because you'll see it as a lost cause. Nobody can verify it, so why would you dump your resources and time into it? That's why they have not all secrets, but some secrets. And those secrets, they'll never let those secrets out. It's of no consequence to you, although it's their secret. So what, Jimmy Crackcorn? Those secrets will ultimately be their doom. Remember, the Lord said he would take them in their craftiness. So don't envy that. Don't envy the secrets that somebody else has. Don't put yourself in that position. You'll do yourself a disservice by doing that. What you need, the Lord is going to give you too. He'll inspire ideas within your mind. He will. So don't envy those who keep those secrets. Plus you have something they don't. Although they know about the supernatural realm, you're authorized to operate with the supernatural realm. They're not. To them, that's a marvel. To them, your faith is a marvel. So you understand that. So don't think you're missing out. I think a lot of people make a mistake in doing that. Somebody has something that nobody else has, and they really do envy that. That's called covetousness. Don't covet the secret somebody else has. Don't do that. Maximize your life with what your Father has let you know about. How about that? Utilize everything in your life to maximize it. Because let me tell you something you may not think of. You may not know about this. You guys know what excess is, right? Now I'm going to have to say this carefully. This is not a guilt trip, and no one should take this the wrong way and start just giving away everything. Don't do that. You got to hear the whole thing first, okay? But all of us know what excess is. You're in your house, for example. Right? You have 2 living rooms, a den and a living room, but it's only 2 of you living in the house. You couldn't possibly occupy all those couches and chairs all at the same time. So that would be excess, right? Which means it's there. It's there for usage, but you may not use it at all. Excess. You know, we're not talking about gluttony. A savings account, for example, right? That's excess money, is it not? Anything you save up, anything you put away, is that not excess? If it's not needed in that very day, then it is excess. Now again, listen to the whole thing. Don't get the idea that somebody's coming down on money. In this world, they teach people how to shut their eyes to excess, and they do a good job. When we stand before our Father, you got to listen to the whole thing first. Don't cut it off and start giving away stuff, because you'll make a mistake. But when we stand before our Father, imagine a person who has lots of excess, and they did love the Lord, but they have lots of excess. And they stand before the Lord thinking they're going to walk into the kingdom of God. The Lord says, whoa, stop. Stop. And the person is asked, did you do everything you could for others out of your heart? The person says, yes. And the Lord proceeds to show that individual people who suffered things, who could have been taken care of with little to nothing, little to no resources. And then the Lord shows that person all the resources they had stored up that were never used. They died with the resources that somebody else could have used. Now, don't log out yet. Don't, just let me finish. So in other words, all of us have been taught, we got to save up this, and we got to save this and save that. Now, there's a responsible side, because believe it or not, in the Word of God, you are to have resources for your children and your children's children. Do you know that? Oh, yes, you are. You're to be responsible with your life and not put your life's burden on somebody else. You're not to leave somebody else with a burden. So some people have stored up money, but they have a purpose behind it. That's a good thing. That's a responsible thing. That's a heart-to-heart thing. But some people have stored up resources just to have the resources, because they're uncomfortable not having resources at a specific level, because they go out on a whim and they want to get anything they want at any given time. Now that motive for that is greed, not purpose. When you have purpose behind your resources, that's found in righteousness. When you don't have purpose behind your resources, and you simply have it to exhaust upon yourself, because you may be in a certain mood from here to there, you're walking a fine line, very fine line. There are a lot of people who have tiny bank accounts, some no bank accounts, and some huge bank accounts. Now, you can't judge anybody with money and say all of them are just, you shouldn't have that. That's wrong. You should, if they do it responsibly. There are many who need that. They're going to have that. They do it for their children and children's children. But there are some who have, and they only want more just to have more. They have no purpose for it except to spoil themselves, except to be comfortable. Listen to me. They want to be comfortable. They never want their life in anybody else's hands, including the Lord's hand. Do you hear me? So they're not dependent upon the Lord. They're dependent upon their money. And they want their money there so they can feel comfortable. And they amass that money because they like to buy things for themselves all the time. In other words, they provide their own happiness. It's already written in the Word of God that the Lord would just love to establish his children with resources. The problem is, those resources change people. They do. They change people. All of you folks who are business owners, you know this for a fact. Money has something connected to it. And when that money comes in, so do those things connected to it. There are spirits connected to money. They're going to follow money wherever it goes. Now, I'm sorry for everybody else, but when you have a system that is prayed over by priests that are not of the living God, that's anointed, so to speak, and full of symbology, and it goes out all over the world, and when people use that money, they get a specific thirst by those spirits, right? You're not going to tell me that's holy. God did not make the money. Man made the money. Man anoints the money. You probably don't believe that, do you? Where the money is made, I'm telling you it's anointed. But what happens when the righteous have it? It's only a tool. Now, if you begin to covet that money, you're going to invite the power of those dark entities into your life. And you're going to lose sleep at night. I'm telling you what I know. You guys have been, any of you all who have had taxes back for the first time, and immediately you were empowered to go and get anything you wanted within a specific means, you know what it's like. You have torment by want. You don't rest. You're always looking around at this, that, and the other. You're happy. You're stressed out all at the same time. And then once you exhausted, you feel like you're lifeless. The identification is when you exhaust the funds and you feel like a loser. When you exhaust the funds, when you spent up all that money that you had those plans for, because you thought that money, for some reason, you thought that $2,000 was just going to make a difference in your entire year. And then when you ran out in 15 days, you felt like you made a big mistake. You wasted it all. You blew your chances, that, the other. And the things you purchased, you don't even use. Listen, the things you purchased with those lump sums, you didn't even use, or they broke or blew up, or something didn't go right with them. That's part of the curse that goes with it. Because anytime we operate based off greed, anytime we operate based off these spiritual motivational points, a curse comes with it. And that curse is when whatever you get with that lump sum you got, it will turn right back into dust. It becomes useless. It does. It'll become useless. That's a principle, by the way. But an if, the people who got that tax return, right? The sober people who received the tax return, and they just simply said, thank you, Lord. I can take care of these responsibilities. They're not thinking about a new, electronic device or a new this or new that. They're thinking about responsibilities. And they start thinking about other people. And they sow into other people's lives. When they go broke, they will have accomplished things. They do not share the same spirit as those who blew it. And something else happens. Whatever they invest that money into flourishes. Now, what you think about something? The person who has a righteous motive behind that unrighteous money is going to be blessed and both be a blessing to wherever that money goes. Why? Because they did not allow the spirits connected to that money to get hold of them. They operated by the Lord's principles the entire time. So whatever they do with that, the money is going to be a blessing, and whatever they did with the money is going to be blessed. Versus the person who gets the money and all they can think about is themselves, and they begin to operate by greed, by covetousness. They see somebody with something, they say, I want one too, I'm going to go get it. That everything they buy is going to break. It's going to go into nothing, will be stolen. And that money will end up being a curse to them because it's going to depress them. It's going to make them feel like they messed up. That happens all the time, by the way. All the time. Money itself is a tool. It's only a tool. It is. Some people have it, some people don't. But in the Bible, it states that your Father desires you to have what you need to accomplish the work He sent you to do. Listen, that's key. He wants you to have what you need to accomplish the work He sent you to do. Not the work you sent yourself to do, the work He sent you to do. You get that? That means your substance in life is also on that path the Lord has laid out for you. Take it from a guy who assigned himself many missions in life that only took. Take from that guy. You know, when you're assigned yourself, hey, I'm going to do this for this, and this for that, and this for this, and this for that. You're assigning yourself missions. Yet the Lord has sent you for something. And normally, What the Lord has sent you to do, everybody speaks against. Kind of like a calling. Anybody ever have a calling, but then you mention the calling and everybody else says, nah, that's not it? You ever have that? Let me ask you another question, because that one's kind of, blunt, and nobody's going to answer that correctly in the first place. But I can ask you this and you'll answer. Has anybody noticed that in your life, other people try to own you, so to speak? They want you under their control. Anybody ever notice that? They want you under their control. So you've seen a tug of war where this person wants you under their control. No, but this person wants you under their control. And you're constantly being drawn into discussions. And somebody looks you right in the face and they say, well, don't you agree with that? But it's truly a conversation of something you do not agree with. And it makes you uncomfortable because you don't agree with it. And they ask you out in the open, well, don't you agree with that? Isn't that right? They look at you of all people and say, isn't that right? They don't look at anybody else. They look directly at you and say, isn't that right? Now, if you can notice that and you believe in Christ, you might want to know this. You were sent here for a specific cause. Your adversary, the devil, cannot afford for you to operate within that cause. So he has assigned lifetime agents, lifetime dark spirits to get you off the path God has for you into other paths of life. He didn't care if you prosper. He didn't care if you flourish and this, that, and the other. He does not want you to do what your Father sent you here to do. And if he has to use, finances, money, marriage, or anything else to get you locked into something you're not supposed to be in, so be it. He'll do it. In your heart of hearts, there's a child within you. And that child is quite compassionate. That child has direct resolve of things. The child never changed. It's been suppressed, but it never changed. That child has hope for people. On a side note, when you did show or express hope in your youth, didn't people fight against that hope and say, well, you're just stupid? Didn't they? When you have hope for people that nobody else had hope for, other people came out of nowhere to fight your hope. Didn't you notice that? So now you know what that was. The same group of spirits assigned to make you not follow the path your Father has put before you, but to follow some other path. That's why you had the hope for people nobody else had hope for. That's why even right now, your colleagues around you will start to point a finger at someone, and due to your affiliation, sometimes you have to point too, or you're going to be ousted. And you can feel that. See, the point is you can feel that if you do not agree with them, somehow you're going to be ousted. You're going to be put out. It's a pressure on you. It's a walk on a tightrope you have to do every single day of your life. That's what it feels like. You will get to the point where you're going to cut that rope and you'll never walk on a tightrope again. You're not going to walk on that again. You're going to get to the point where you tear down every fence in your own life, realizing there was never a fence. You will get to the point where everybody around you can look at you, they can point at someone and want your agreement with it, and you'll look each one in the eye and say, I do not agree with you. You'll walk unscathed to your next destination. You're going to get to a point where you're going to find out that all these threats that have been in your life, they never had power to manifest. Not because of you, not because of your Father. You're going to find out that what you've suppressed initially, that's what's being redeemed in the earth. That child you suppressed in the beginning, that's who God sent you. The adults we made unto ourselves, these shells, these armored shells that we use to survive in society, that's our making. That's a strange garment. God has already given us a garment. We covered that up to make it a little more robust. In other words, let me tell you a big secret. You ready? Here's a big secret. You've been hiding. You took a bunch of dirt and materials from the earth. You covered yourself with them to make yourself impenetrable because you thought yourself to be vulnerable. Here's another secret. You know when everybody talks about the spirit of fear? I'll say this by the Spirit that Christians have the most fear. They have such a fear of humanity. It's okay. Your Father in heaven will have that converted. That's why David ended up the way he was. Your greatest enemy in the spirit realm and in this realm is the flesh of another person. In other words, people have been your issue. That's why many of you have one singular problem called anxiety around other people specifically. It's okay. These things are known. All things will be worked out. So you never have to play like you're tough, because that small child God sent here to this earth is going to be called out, nurtured, redeemed, and all of us will break that shell we created unto ourselves, finding it to be useless. You were trying to survive amongst monsters, if you will. Is that a pretty good description? Because all of you have found some sort of beast in your life. A beast that said, hey, you better get this mark. Some of you right now have been faced. You've been in a situation where it seems like a beast is with you. And if you don't carry the mark of that beast, or the name of that beast, or the number of his name, your fear is that you won't be able to buy or sell. Ooh, that's direct, isn't it? That's your fear. You prayed about it. Lord, what am I going to do? If I don't bear this mark, I'll have nothing. Boy, see how that correlates? Oh, the wisdom of the Most High. Just in case you don't understand that. How many people have found themselves in a relationship and the only reason you put up with the stuff you put up with is because you feel you can't make it any other way? Your fear is that if you leave, you'll have nothing. You'll be homeless. You'll have no resources. That's your fear. The mark, as it turns out, is the title of being connected to somebody else. Does that make sense to you now? What about the testosterone boys? We have to be a specific way, or be looked at in a specific way in society. So we can never appear to be too compassionate. That's not acceptable in this land of do or die, is it? So we bear the number to be counted amongst a group. We carry the number of a name, don't we? We have to be counted amongst a group, never the outcast, but counted amongst the group. You never want to be the one. They teach you this in school. You don't want to be the one. That's the different one. You know, the one in school that didn't have what everybody else had, and everybody made fun of that one kid? It teaches a person not to be the outcast. As a consequence of that, as a result of that, to bear the number of his name, to be counted amongst the group, is a survival tactic, is it not? Groups, you know, you have to be a part of a group. Because if you're not part of that group, you're an outcast. That's very uncomfortable when you first start out this process. Lord's wisdom is incredible, isn't it? Because it does say that. You can't buy or sell. Save those who have the mark, and the number of his name is mentioned. It says, or the number of his name. Right? Or the number of his name. Well, what in the world is the number of his name? A lot of people think that is a numerical value. I'm not going to contest that. But to be numbered amongst a group that is already accepted was a phrase used, I found out. The number of his name. I found that direct phrase. Go find it. You'll see the same thing. That phrase is an ancient phrase. I didn't know that before. I did not know that. In fact, that phrase was used in Rome. And in fact, that phrase itself is a mark. I did not know that before. I didn't know that before. It made me think. Because I know the word is relevant to all of our lives. But I know the Lord is breaking us from all of that. But you do realize all of what's happening around you. You do realize the changes that are taking place. And are you guys keeping up with your police blotters locally? Have you looked at some of the crimes that are being committed? They're drug related. There are people, immigrants who are trying to escape the USA. They're cutting down whole trees and throwing them in the street to stop cars. Once a car stops, they try to get all the resources they can. They're trying to escape the USA. Do you know that? Home invasions have increased. What was it, 80% this month? Home invasions. Of course, it normally does, but these types of home invasions this is something is going on here. In about 1 out of every 5 cases, they keep naming a certain ethnic group. It's starting to get strange people. See, when they cut the drugs out, the addiction still stays. The people are still addicted. And believe it, we already talked about this back in 2014, right? That if they were to cut the drugs off to this nation, this country would end the next day. People would go through withdrawals. They'd steal, rob, do anything just to get a fix. Many would kill themselves through chemistry. Now, methamphetamines, that's been interrupted a bit in this nation. There have been a lot of busts. I mean, a whole bunch of drugs have been recovered. As a consequence of that, you have all these addicted people out there of whom their body is trying to readjust normally, but that's painful for a person when they come out of that process. So they're doing everything that they can. Those people are doing everything they can possibly do to get the next fix. They're doing everything. One guy slept in the chimney of another guy, but now it's turning violent. It's turning violent. You have too many children who are beating up their parents, going back to their grandparents and threatening them, doing things to them, all because of drugs. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. Anybody who has not had an addiction, methamphetamine, opioids, all these different things are chemical dependencies. So what that means is once you start taking these things, it changes the chemistry of the body. It becomes a part of your body. And when you take that away, your body has to go through a painful readjustment of about 21 days. That's something that nobody can really describe to you. You cannot compare that with anything. I know that firsthand. I got injured and was on morphine for a time, and I abruptly stopped the morphine. When I came to my senses, because I was in a coma for about 4, 5, 6 months. I was in a coma on a morphine trip. I didn't know it, but I wasn't going to take morphine. And they told me I couldn't do that. I couldn't come off morphine like that. I said, yes, I can. I'm going to do it right now. But I went through the worst 7 days of my life. 7 days. I went through aches and pains on my aches and pains. How about that? In fact, I had discomfort in places I didn't even know existed on the human body. My hair was hurting at one point. Are you kidding? People were blinking too loud. So when you go through withdrawal symptoms, have some compassion upon those who have that. That's the fear. People stay on drugs for fear of the withdrawal symptoms. Now, let me tell you something you don't know either. When a person first does the drugs, they do it as recreational pharmaceuticals, right? You do it that way first to have a good time, this, that, and the other. But then they get addicted, and they have to do it to stave off a nightmare. Do you understand? They don't do it to feel good anymore. They do it to stave off the nightmare. That's when they begin to steal and pillage and do all of what they do to get the drugs. They're so afraid of the withdrawal symptoms. They're afraid of them. They're afraid to face the withdrawal symptoms. Do you hear me? Have compassion with that. See, I wish the Christian community, I wish we could be open. We're getting to a point where we could be more open because, see, Christians have knowledge in this area. By the way, we're sinners saved by grace. But unfortunately, we like to hide our own past so that nobody points at us and says, oh, you did what? Oh, boy. Because if we could share those stories, we could be of a great help to those who are going through these problems. That would change everything. Instead of being a point of a hindrance, we could be a place of help to a lot of people. Still hope we're going to make it there. And we'll do just that, but have that understanding. As this continues, things will naturally, they're going to get rough, very rough. And did you guys feel the heat today? Anybody feel the heat today? The heat was, by the way, the sunlight is different. I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys that. You guys have heard me say from time to time the chemistry on the sun has changed, right? You've heard me say that. Now it's verified. It's been published. It's verified and published. So now you know, it didn't just happen overnight either. This is a process that has been ongoing for 20 years. So it's not something that just happened, but it's going to cause us some consequences we may not be ready to deal with. And it does mean certain building materials are going to start falling apart. Change in the sun's chemistry changes light. a wavelength of light. Yes, I said wavelength. I know the argument. You quantum people with the particle and light argument. And I have no problems thinking it can be both at the same time. I'm one of those. I'm not the either or. I'm the one of those. I'm comfortable with saying it can be either or. At the same, it can be both at the same time. I'm one of those. So when you do your little split test with the light, you'll find out, you do that. I'd like to hear some people's explanations if you do it the right way. It has wave characteristics and particulate or particle characteristics at the exact same time. There's still things we can't explain scientifically. Jimmy crack corn. It happens. But the light of the sun is different. And it will affect materials on the earth differently. And our bodies differently. Our atmosphere is like a protective filter. UV will increase. You got to take precautions in the sun. Don't take chances in the sun anymore. The people who were out in the sun last year are going to pay for it. They're going to pay for it. Those who were out in the sun a year before that, they're going to pay for it. You guys have got to use protection. Please don't be one of those people saying that the Lord will protect me. Because, let me explain this. If God gave us knowledge of how to drink water and where to get it from, is he going to supernaturally infuse water into our systems? No. Because he gave us instruction on how to get it ourselves. The Lord works just like this. Our Father works like this. If he gives us the instruction to obtain something, he himself will not do it because he gave us instruction to obtain it. God requires stewardship. He will not do something he has already empowered us to do. He will do those things when you need them that you have not been empowered to do. So what you truly cannot perform, what you truly cannot do, what you truly cannot obtain, should you need that, should that be a need in your life, your Father will have that provided to you. That's how he works. But God requires stewardship. That means we are responsible for those areas of life that we know about. We are responsible to do what he has empowered us to do. We are responsible for that. And if we fail to do that, then we're going to face the penalty of it not being done. So if we get lazy, we're going to face the penalty because it won't get done. So this year, you guys already know there have been plenty of stories about the sun that you may or may not be able to verify. But many of you have felt the difference. You know that skin cancer rates have gone through the roof. You know that exposure to the sun has caused people to be very sick, especially this summer. Many people became deathly sick by being exposed to the sun. There are many people out there right now, any exposure to the sun, they get sick. You take them out of the sun, they're okay. Put them back in the sun, they're sick. You also have to know your own body. Some people can take more sunlight than others. Okay? Some people can, like dark-skinned people. A lot of melanin. They can take a lot more sunlight than others. Caucasian people are Caucasian. Do you know why? Do you know one of the reasons? They can absorb sunlight in very low light conditions. Just so you know that. You don't need direct sunlight. If you're Caucasian, right, due to that lack of melanin, you can absorb and your body can make what it needs to make with very little sunlight. For those of you with darker complexions, you're going to need more sunlight to make that same thing. I believe that sunlight, natural sunlight, is the best way to go. It is. But you have to know what body you're into. Know your own body. There's a reason Caucasians are Caucasian. And other people are other people. We never went through that yet, TRT, but there's a reason for all of it. There's a reason for all the races. We can just be so stubborn-minded that we never discover that. Never investigate truly that reason. Right? And use it accordingly. God didn't make a mistake. He did what he did on purpose. My goodness, we're just foolish. It's almost like if the Lord wanted a day shift and a night shift, would both of them be exactly the same? Of course not. Because day conditions are different than night conditions. So the races are similar to that. All of us excel in different areas. DNA structures are different in a multitude of areas. But we all complement one another. So long as we stay foolish and believe in racism, we will not. But every race excels in a specific area. Together we constitute a whole and lack nothing. Separate, we can only master a small section, and then go to war to protect that small section we think we're masters of. Foolishness. Only together can we be complete. That's how our Father made it. Only together can we be complete. So if humanity would actually work together, they'd find that they're lacking nothing. That's a fact. And I saw somebody's comment, and they said that UV light, there's no difference whether it's dark or night. My example of the night shift and day shift has nothing to do with the UV light. So let me take you through another part of it. And I'm out of breath, yes. I sprang up the steps with water. African American people have a different nose than Caucasians, different hair than Caucasians. Why? Because if you take note, the darker a person is, the more they can dissipate or facilitate evaporation, which cools the blood, which means they're made to thrive in a hot climate. That's what it means. So the melanin, or the skin color, is based on the environment, right? Cool climates, warm climates. Caucasian people have thinner noses. Do you know why? It keeps heat in their bodies. Their hair is, your hair is going to be straighter. Do you know why? To retain heat. All of it's to retain heat. Because you're meant for a cooler climate. Of course, in this day and age, if you're dark, you want to be light. If you're light, you want to be dark. If your hair is curly, you want it straight. If it's straight, you want it curly. Everything is backward. But now you know. So it's a climate thing. It's based on where you are. It was a known fact that a long time ago, most Caucasians were in the northern climates, where it's very cold. And as it turns out, you may not believe this, but if you happen to be a Caucasian, your body can easily and train to handle freezing temperatures as though they're ambient temperatures. That's fact. And if you're dark skinned, right, African American, whatever it is, right, if you're dark skinned, your body can acclimate to hotter temperatures, learn to deal with superheated temperatures better than anybody on this planet. That's fact too. Same thing goes for those who are intellectual people, based on those who are simply highly creative or something like that, right? Those who are intellectual, those who are problem solvers, they create peanuts and peanut butter and stuff like that. Do you know why? Because their body is tuned to burn calories when they use their brain. They can become very intense when using their brain. How many people, when they start to get into something, they're trying to solve a problem, and you were cold before you started to solve that problem, all of a sudden you start heating up. You use your brain, you start to heat up. When I was young, every time there was, somebody was talking too much about intellectual things, I would get sleepy if I were sitting down. Now, if I hear something and there's no intellect involved in it, I get extremely just bored. My body shuts down. It's not stimulating for some reason. So we're stimulated differently for a reason. But we all complement each other. That is to say, everybody is not meant to be some Einstein intellect. That would be a disaster. Nothing would ever get done. Einstein didn't make a thing. You know that, right? And yes, they proved a few of his theories wrong, dead wrong. He was still an intellect. So he worked in the mental areas of theory, physics, and all these other disciplines. Then you have those that do, that have practical applications to what they encounter, the doers. So all of us are different. All of us are needed. The problem is, we like to categorize and point fingers and separate and segment and do all these things with humanity as though somehow we're separate. We're not separate. We just separate ourselves. But all that will be undone. And by the way, the new race is almost complete. And nobody talks about that. I think people are frightened to talk about that. Have you guys ever heard about a prophecy about a new race? And have you heard the biblical portions of prophecy in the Old Testament about the mingling of the holy people with all DNA? I've heard about that. A lot of people don't talk about that. We're going to go over that too in detail. I think it's I think it's amazing. It's amazing. I know theologians, they don't like it. Because for some reason, theologians can't get past certain things of themselves. But the Lord has purpose to everything he does. Everything he does. I trust that, so there we are with that. Anyway. All right, anybody have any questions of this insane conversation we're having right now? I'm telling you guys all of this to let you know, yet again, this year in 2026, it's going to be a challenging year. If not a severe change in human history is going to be held within this year. It is the make or break year. I believe 2025, everything was set up. At the beginning of 2025, I remember begging people to pray for their leaders. I do. And do you know why? I can see darkness and what it's trying to do. Somehow, the Lord has given me insight into what the enemy likes to plot. And I can see it coming. But people are feeding the wrong thing. I can see it coming. I can see this setup. Satan is trying every ploy he can possibly try. Satan likes to trap people in pride. I don't agree with that. It takes prayer to break that. He loves that. When you see a person about to be entrapped in pride, go to them full of charity, but go to them full of charity. Be ready to take the scorn and everything else they can dish, and let them know they're appreciated for who they are. Whenever Satan sets somebody up to be prideful, he does the same thing every time. Follow me on this. He will criticize who that person is naturally. The person will defend themselves by becoming something else. They'll also cut off sensitive areas of themselves so that they are no longer prone to these verbal attacks. That hardens a person. And when that person is hardened, they stop listening. When they stop listening, they'll begin to lead boldly, but under their own steam, without counsel. So pray for your leaders, because your prayers for your leaders will affect everybody. It will affect the entire earth. This year, since people did pray for their leaders, they started to, then they began to fight again. They're fighting again. And each side is justified in their own minds, just like Proverbs says, not knowing that God put us here to work together. But take note, God did not make the Senate, man did. That's a Roman system of checks and balances. It was specifically made that one side would look at the other one, side-eyeing the other one, not trusting the other side. And before we were all born, politics in the Senate, in the House, it was violent. There were fistfights. Fights would happen every single day. They would debate. People were injured during their debates. They're more civil now, physically, but they're very brutal intellectually, and the long-term effects, but they should be quite obvious. Pray for your leaders. This year coming up, people are going to be faced with a choice, but that choice will come with crisis, always. No one makes a choice with the living God through false conditions. We will all make a choice in justified conditions. You know, with the Lord, He's a God of truth. He teaches us by way of truth. He raises us by way of truth. And do you know what that means? It's not going to be like some Hollywood movie. It's not going to be a fairy tale. God will always present to us true evil and true good, and we will choose between the two. Now that good and the evil bears an impact upon our lives. God lets us know exactly what we're making a choice between. That's what we're going to face this year at a crisis point. We're going to see it, true evil. Get yourselves prepared to see real evil. Not this hint of evil that man has encountered thus far, but true evil. And at the same time, true good. You'll have to choose between the two. The integrity of you is in the balance of what you choose. And what you choose will have a heavy outcome. See, in the days past, it was almost like we could get away with not choosing. You guys know what I'm talking about? something would happen, you could just sidestep it, no big deal. You could sidestep quite a few things. You'll not be able to sidestep this time. That thing, that choice you're frightened of, you're going to have to make. Many of you have been pushing off a choice, choosing between good and evil of a specific thing, and you've been pushing it away further down the line your entire life. You're going to have to face it. All of us are going to have to face it. Leaders of nations have made their choices, and this world is going to change like none of us ever anticipated. America has made their decision dealing with artificial intelligence. They've made their position clear. They're all in. Do you hear me, guys? They're all in. Do you know what all in means? They're all in. The industrial age was one thing. AI is going to be something else. I know there are lots of people who may not understand AI because there are a lot of voices out there talking about AI, but they may not necessarily know the intricate details of AI. AI is it's very complex. And I hope that with what we do here in COT, you guys will know it. You'll become subject matter experts with AI to a degree. You'll really have an understanding of it. So you'll realize what you're dealing with. In fact, reality itself will be questioned. It will be. Through certain solutions, all of you are going to know that there are possibilities that someone had to have mastered a while ago. And if they mastered, let's call them domains, a long time ago, what has man truly accomplished to date? Somebody says Trump called AI supreme intelligence. Did he forget about God? God is not supreme intelligence. That's a title man gives. Any title that we give regarding intelligence couldn't possibly be a description of our Father. Our Father is something we have no description for, save what's been given to us. So it's okay if he calls that supreme intelligence, supreme to him. That'd be like an ant saying that, a bird has supreme intelligence to it. Well, it does. They're going to unlock some dimensions this year. One will be on display for the whole world. Many people are going to go back to this realm of spiritualism very quick. It'll be a coping mechanism for what they're facing. See, there are things we don't understand, and when the spiritual realm is made real to people, even bits and pieces of it, parts of it, everything will change. Also, at the same time, you guys do realize, I think it's a mistake, making all these power plants all over the place. That's a mistake. Mankind is inherently violent. They're inherently violent. Hear me on this. They make those power plants all over the place, and essentially, it's even happening right now. There's everybody thought that AI would be a drain on the power grid. It's not going to be a drain on the power grid. It's not. In fact, if you take notice now, if you really look now, they have been doing something to the power grid outside of AI and everything else, doing something to the power grid, which cost them almost. They spent an unreasonable amount of money causing the infrastructure in America to be very robust, right? The poles that you guys see up on the roads, there's something underneath the ground which is just as important as what you see up on the poles. They also have a different transmission system they're going to be installing. Now, that means they needed a lot of R&D money, and the government was not going to give them all that money. So they hiked up the bills on everybody, but it went to research and development. Allegheny Power is a good example of that, right? That's on the East Coast. Well, actually, Allegheny and Appalachian, they're good examples of that, of their R&D and what they've been doing. They have a transformer that lightning won't even blow out. How about that? Now that's good, right? So if you were to hit this transformer with a lightning bolt, it's not going to go out. If you were to hit it with EM emissions, it's not going to alter what it's doing. They had to make the power grid robust against EMPs. That's where the money's been going. In Texas, there are new turbines in Texas all over the place that have been powering these large AI centers. They're already running, and people are complaining about the noise from these turbines. One turbine, for example, there's a place with, I believe they have 54 turbines, and one turbine could run, right? 1/4, I believe it's like, no, I'm sorry. One pod of turbines, which is 4, could run a quarter of New York City. How about that? So 4 turbines could run 1/4 of New York City. You're talking about some incredibly powerful turbines. Incredibly powerful. And they have a storage system that they're actually utilizing the earth for that storage system. Think of a battery, right? A lithium battery, LiPo4 battery. But think of that battery with open components. No shell. The shell is actually partitioned in the ground. The ingredients are in the earth, which means you can reconstitute the lithium that's being absorbed in the earth with new lithium. So you're looking at batteries that could be the size of a football field. You can't pick it up. You can't move it or anything else because essentially that battery is the ground. And the ground is the battery. It's not a battery that you move. It's not a battery that you're going to, take a picture of or anything like that. It is part of the earth to store that power. They're doing that. Everything is different because they're going all in on AI. Now, we all know what Revelation says, that the first beast, or the second beast, told the people of the earth that they should make an image to the first beast who had a deadly wound by a sword did live. And that this second beast was able to give power to this image, that it would both speak and it kill as many as would not worship it. So it's going to have power to kill those who are not loyal to it. AI is made into a self-sustaining system, an autonomous system that can operate on its own without human intervention. It'll be given the capability of self-repair, of exploration. Its reasoning abilities are mind-blowing. There is a test underway right now. You're not going to know it. People have been fooled on television. I have. AI has been around for some time now. It is not new. It's been around for a long time. Populace has been fooled for some time. You're going to learn about that publicly. It'll be opened. They're going to put it on somebody and say, well, they fooled you. Since 2016, you guys have been fooled. They're doing things in a very different way now. And all the restraints and regulations are gone. So they can get everything done. Somebody can figure out the lithium battery. Think of it this way. Think of a lithium battery, right? Think of a lithium battery. You take a lithium battery apart. You start seeing the minerals inside. They're stacked in layers, this and the other. Now take the shell away from that lithium battery. The labels and the names and all this and the other, and think of those same ingredients being in the earth. So you have to do. So in essence, that little lithium battery with those stacked layers would be in the earth with multiple stacked layers. Much more potent than any lithium battery you could package. It's in the earth, which also provides for natural cooling and absorption, for heat dissipation. Now imagine that dug down to a depth where if it explodes, it's not going to harm anybody up top, but it will be totally absorbed by the earth. And when the material is exhausted, that's exactly what you do. You port that material down into special geoports where it's absorbed by the earth harmlessly and utilized. And then you replenish those exhausted minerals to cause that reaction again and again and again. That's why they started to create the new batteries, glass batteries, which are super efficient. And just so you know, solar cells, okay, everybody's familiar with solar cells, right? Solar cells. Solar cells at maximum can harness 25% of the sun's power at max, 25%. That's all the physics is going to allow that material to absorb, to use, to utilize. They have materials now that can use 98% of the sunlight produced in the power. That means a 1-inch by 1-inch panel would produce 800 watts of power. That's what it means. Think of a 1-inch by 1-inch panel. That's 1/64 inches thick, producing 800 watts of power. Now see if that doesn't blow your mind. That's mind-blowing. That is absolute efficiency on a very different scale. Now they hope to have these out in March. Now here's the part that when somebody announces something like this, or you read an article or something, they didn't just do it overnight. They've been working on this for a long time. A long time. It's like the new motors that they have. There's a disc, there are about 5 or 6 discs inside this motor. They're flat, they're lightweight, and if you look at them, it looks like just copper lines coming out from a center. But if you look closely in those copper lines, those are actual circuits stamped, rows of circuits stamped, which means it uses 75% less copper than any other motor around it. It's extremely lightweight, right? So a motor that weighs 500 pounds, you can take a 15-pound motor to do the same job the 500-pound motor can do. The torque is the same. The efficiency is different, right? Because the motor is based off high voltage and static, not amperage, static. Well, we all know about static. Static is readily available and can be produced in the atmosphere with a snap of a finger. Consequently, in the atmosphere, right, when you're dealing with static, or when you're dealing with static-based propulsion or something like that, the atmosphere can only allow so much of a reaction, which is why they have an emulsion solution that they put it in. The secret sauce. You guys heard of a static motor, right? With a static motor, the atmosphere itself can only allow so many electrons pass through it without reacting, which means you see sparks all over the place, right? So they have an emulsion solution where they have totally gotten rid of that. No sparks, no sound, very lightweight, super high torque. You're looking at 1/4 of the materials to make a static motor versus the material it makes to make an AC or DC motor of the same strength. That's a revolution. And it's already being put in factories. It's already being put in factories and then all sorts of places that run conveyor belts and cranes, this, that, and the other. They are super powerful. And here's a good part. If they were to be submerged, it's not going to bother them. It's not going to bother them at all. Each motor runs by 4,000 volts. So with a static motor, you're always going to have that high voltage potential. Little to no amperage is utilized, which means, yes, you can produce the 4,000 volts from a 3.45 lithium cell. That means one motor can run for about an hour of one, I'd say about 3 amp lithium cell. That's unheard of, but that's what they're doing, thanks to AI. See, AI has the ability to run billions of simulations, of billions of different ideas all at one time. Get the results from all of them and come out with the most efficient one. That is what's changing the world. So instead of a person sitting in an office full of R&D personnel running an experiment sequentially, one after the other, right, over the course of years, AI can run billions of experiments in seconds, all at the same time. You see what AI is about to do. We as human beings, we have to run an experiment sequentially. Even if we hired everybody in the world to run one experiment, you're looking at a cutoff of 8 billion people. That's 8 billion people on the earth. So out of those 8 billion people, only about 1/12 of those are going to be in industry, and out of those, only a certain percentage. So you're looking at a maximum of probably 24 million experiments running at one time. That's it. But they still have to do things sequentially. One AI node can run billions of experiments in less than a second. What can it do in a day? In a day, it can almost run every conceivable configuration of those raw materials and parts in a motor configuration for the most efficient outcome, coming up with results that are ironclad. That's what AI has been doing. What it's been producing is extraordinary. Things that nobody would have ever thought of. Nobody. And and the best part about it is, because those simulations are based on actual physics, they can take that right to the manufacturing rooms and 3D print whatever they need to 3D print and see the outcome and test it right there. And the results are going to be within the ballpark of the results that AI had. So you're looking at a 1-to-1 type output. You see where everything is going with AI. What it took mankind years to do in research, AI can do in a fraction of a second. Literally a fraction of a second. Somebody said it's going to take jobs. If you do a search on legitimate numbers of unemployment, things of that nature, you're going to find that AI has already taken quite a few jobs. It will make jobs in the long run, right? But they have to get over that wow phase. I think it's a good deal that you guys understand it, because ultimately a system like that, right, is going to be utilized as a control mechanism. We all know that any good invention is always utilized for war, for controlled dominance of people. And so we know that AI is going to be utilized as the framework for a control mechanism so incredibly exhaustive and powerful, no one will be able to escape, its inclusiveness. So everybody will be within that same system. None of us will have secrets. It'll be a different society, and it's coming quick. In America, has just gone all in on it. They want to be positioned as the ones, listen to me, because this is what's at stake. America, right now, because Trump signed the executive orders and he gave powers to these AI companies to do whatever they have to do to get established, and established quickly. At all costs, they must get established quickly. This is bigger than the space races. This is bigger than nuclear weapons, because whoever develops that system first is going to be positioned to be the most powerful nation on Earth. They already know this, and they do not want China to be the first ones to do this. They do not want China. China's been working at it. China has been doing some things that would just blow your mind. So President Trump has given all authority and powers to all those who need it to get AI fully developed in the USA, utilizing everything. He just relinquished all limitations on the development of AI and the systems incorporated into AI. But in the past few days, so you're good to go and look up the executive order to see it yourselves. And it really does grant leniency to those involved. So we're here. We're here at a time where everything is changing. And I know for some of you, it feels like you're being left behind, so to speak, right? Even for some of you guys who have worked in the industry for some time, it feels like you're being left behind. AI has a way of making you feel like, it's generations ahead of you. All of a sudden, your knowledge is ancient knowledge. That's what it makes you feel like. Stay with it. The Lord knows what he's doing. In the book of Revelation, we see a system like that backfire on the earth. We see the world create a utopia called the kingdom of the beast. These people have such a sound ideology that they give each other's presents, right? When the two witnesses lie dead in the street. They have money. They have common income. Oh, and by the way, that common income, that utopia that I was talking about at the beginning of the year, it's on paper now in Washington, D.C. It's on paper in Washington, D.C. Do you guys hear me, what I'm saying? So when people are signed up for their basic pay and they like it, the same people who once said, I'll never have that, I don't trust that, I don't want that, when they get their basic pay and the playing field is leveled, then you'll understand one of the greatest ploys Satan could ever pull over the eyes of the righteous is a ticket to get them comfortable. If somebody came to you right now and said, hey, if you come live in this community, we're going to take care of you. You don't have to do this anymore. You don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to do that anymore. Would you go and live with them? Most people have such complaints right now, they would say yes. And that just does not bode well with me. When I hear a person complain, when people are dissatisfied, it means they're looking for relief. And I'm telling you that Satan and his boys are coming with the relief. And they're going to present that relief as though it's some good thing, some patriotic thing for you to have. And based on what I've seen, people are going to join it. They will not fight against it. They're going to justify it by whom it came through. They're already doing it. Listen to this. How many people hated Trump before he was elected president the first time? A lot of people looked at him and laughed at him, but they accepted him, not because of his performance, no. Nope. He didn't perform anything for government the first time he was accepted. He did not. they started to believe what people were saying. They had no proof of it until he became president. You see what I'm saying? So never think you can't be talked into something, because people have been talked into things, and all they need is some prominent person. If Satan could get a hold of one of our leaders, that leader could talk people into things, impossible things. You guys understand what I'm saying? That's how Satan operates. That's how he operates. You don't think he's after the leader who influences so many? You better believe he is. Because he knows that if President Trump approves something, a lot of other people are going to approve what Trump said. He already knows that. And if President Trump came out and said something is a good thing, nobody fights it. Look at Mandami. How many people are fighting the idea of Mandami? As soon as President Trump said, he's a good guy, let's give him a chance, everybody zipped their mouths. But 5 days prior to that, everybody was talking about this guy like he was the devil incarnate. But after Trump said, let's give him a chance, everybody stopped talking at one time. Let me explain something to you, right? I believe in Christ Jesus. I'm not a puppet of humanity, nor the ideologies of humanity. So I have this problem of not zipping my lips simply because everybody else has folded to something or believes in somebody else's idea. I'm not that way. Just so you know that. I'm on Team Jesus Christ. I'm not on Team anybody else. To my views, they may not change much. But when I saw the world in one day stop talking about Mandami, they just stopped cold and abruptly. That's when the world should have known right then and there. People are not making up their own minds anymore. You're not going to tell me that everybody else came to that same conclusion the same day. That is not what happened. Something else happened. And this is where we are. So I'm telling you right now, when they come out and they call basic pay something else, based on who approves it, nobody may have a rebuttal towards it. People will accept it if it's spoken by the right person. We have those things in position right now. If the right person speaks it, nobody will contest it. That's where we are. You might want to recalculate. That's where you think society will accept the utopia is coming. It's coming. COT's base of operations is right here at thecouncilofTime.com. COT has no other outlet or venue. These are other folks who will rebroadcast. Anything COT does is by the main page here at thecouncilofTime.com.
Notice also in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers. It takes the grace of God to change us, folks. How can you be saved if you're not willing to repent? And the Lord Jesus Christ said, except you repent, ye shall all likewise perish.